In my past life, I made the worst mistake of my existence. Against my family's wishes, I broke off my engagement with Ethan and chose to be with Julian, a man I believed to be my true love. I poured my heart, my wealth, and my entire existence into helping him rise to power. My family's name and fortune paved his path to success, but once he reached the top, he discarded me like a used pawn. He married his childhood sweetheart, Olivia, and in front of the entire world, humiliated me. From the beginning to the end, I never loved Miss Ava. It was all her wishful thinking, he declared in front of the media. Olivia, standing by his side, flashed a victorious smile. Julian and I have endured so many hardships, she said sweetly. Even though Miss Ava tried to steal him away with her family background, we never gave up on each other. They had their grand wedding while I was locked away like a forgotten relic of the past. I was nothing more than an obstacle they had to remove. In the end, I died in a dark, cold room, betrayed, broken, and alone. But fate has given me a second chance. This time, I won't be their fool. I won't blindly sacrifice everything for a man who only saw me as a stepping stone. I will make sure Julian and Olivia stay together, forever entangled in the misery they deserve. As Julian's voice rings through the phone, demanding my presence at his mother's birthday, I smirk. In my past life, I would have obeyed without question. Not this time. This time, I play the game on my terms. Chapter 1, Rebirth and Awakening. A gasp escaped my lips as I jolted awake, my heart pounding against my ribs. My hands trembled as I touched my face, my arms, my chest, everything felt real. The suffocating darkness and the cold, damp walls of my prison were gone. Instead, I lay in my bed, wrapped in silk sheets. Sunlight streamed through the grand windows of my family's estate, casting golden hues across the familiar room. I turned to the vanity mirror and froze. Staring back at me wasn't the broken woman who had wasted her life for a man who never loved her. It was me, Ava Kensington, before my downfall. My skin was unmarked by grief, my eyes still held a spark of life. My mind raced, struggling to comprehend the impossible. Had fate truly given me a second chance? Memories of my past life crashed over me like a tidal wave. Julian. Olivia. Their betrayal. My humiliation. My death. My foolishness. I had thrown away the love and loyalty of my family for a man who had used me like a disposable pawn. I had ruined everything, discarding Ethan, the man who had truly loved me, to chase a fantasy. But this time I would not be a fool. A sharp knock at my door broke through my swirling thoughts. My mother's gentle voice followed. Ava, sweetheart, are you awake? Tears pricked my eyes. In my past life, I had ignored her concern, distancing myself from my family for Julian. Regret burned in my chest, but I swallowed it down. I wouldn't make the same mistakes again. This time I would rewrite my story. Chapter 2, Cutting Ties. The phone rang, its shrill tone slicing through the morning tranquility. I didn't need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. Julian. I let it ring, savoring the power of ignoring him. In my past life, I would have rushed to answer, eager to please him. Not this time. A message followed, be at my mother's birthday party tonight. Wear something appropriate. How arrogant. How entitled. Instead of meekly following his command, I made a decision. If I had to attend, I would make an entrance he would never forget. That evening, I arrived in a crimson gown that hugged my figure, dripping in diamonds that sparkled under the chandelier's glow. The moment I stepped into the hall, the room fell silent. Eyes turned toward me, admiration and jealousy swirling among the whispers. Julian's face darkened. Olivia's smile faltered. Ava, Julian began, his voice low, warning. What are you doing? I smiled, a slow, calculated expression. Enjoying the evening, of course. I turned my attention to his mother, presenting her with an extravagant gift. "Mrs. Rutherford, happy birthday. Thank you for the invitation." She blinked in surprise, clearly unsure how to respond. Julian had expected me to arrive as his obedient shadow. Instead, I was the center of attention. I met Olivia's gaze, letting amusement flicker in my eyes. This time, I wasn't a victim. This time, I was in control. Chapter 3: The First Strike. The night of Julian's mother's birthday had been a success, at least for me. I had made my presence known, reclaiming my dignity while subtly undermining Julian and Olivia. But that was only the beginning. If I wanted true revenge, I needed to hit them where it hurt most. Their power, their wealth, their security, it all depended on me. In my past life, I had blindly funneled resources into Julian's company, ensuring his rise to prominence. He had taken everything from me, my family's connections, financial support, and my reputation, only to discard me when I was no longer useful. Not this time. I sat in my father's grand study, my hands resting on the cold, polished wood of his desk. Across from me, my elder brother, Daniel, regarded me with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "You want to cut all financial ties with the Rutherford family?" he repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," I said firmly. "And I want it done immediately." Daniel leaned back, tapping his fingers against the armrest. "You fought for years to convince our family to invest in Julian's company, and now you want to pull out. What changed?" "Everything." But I couldn't tell him the truth. Instead, I met his gaze with quiet conviction. "I made a mistake trusting Julian. I see that now." Daniel studied me, searching for deception. In the past, he had tried to warn me, but I had been too blinded by love to listen. Now, I was giving him the answer he had always wanted to hear. "Fine," he finally said. "I'll handle it. But don't expect Julian to take this lightly." I smiled. "I'm counting on it." By morning, the withdrawal of funds was official. Julian's company would feel the loss immediately. His ongoing projects, expansions, and investments had all relied on my family's backing. The moment the news broke, I received an urgent call. "Julian." This time, I answered. "Ava, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice sharp with barely concealed panic. I leaned back in my chair, tracing idle circles on the desk. "Good morning to you too, Julian. Don't play games with me. Your family just pulled out of our partnership. What are you thinking?" I let silence stretch between us, relishing his frustration. Then, in the calmest voice possible, I said, "I'm simply correcting a mistake." Julian cut himself off, his breath heavy on the other end. Then, his tone shifted, turning sickeningly smooth. "Ava, if this is about last night, let's talk. I know you're upset." "I'm not upset," I interrupted. "I'm done." And with that, I hung up. I knew Julian wouldn't give up so easily. He would fight, manipulate, and scheme to regain control. But this time I was ready. Chapter 4: A Second Chance at Love? For the first time in my two lives, I was free from Julian's grasp. Cutting off my family's financial support was only the beginning, but I knew he wouldn't let me go so easily. He was a man who thrived on control, and losing his greatest asset, me, would drive him to desperation. But I wasn't thinking about Julian today. Today, my mind was on someone I had foolishly cast aside in my past life. Ethan. I still remembered the way I had broken his heart. The disappointment in his eyes when I told him I loved Julian. He had been the perfect fiancé, kind, loyal, and devoted. But I had been too blind to see his worth, chasing after a love that never truly existed. Now, fate had given me another chance. I sat in my car, parked in front of his family's law firm. It was a grand building, sleek and modern, reflecting the prestige of the Lancaster family name. Ethan was set to inherit the firm one day, but back then, I hadn't cared. I had been too obsessed with Julian's ambitions to recognize Ethan's quiet strength. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car. I had no idea if he would even agree to see me, let alone forgive me. Inside, the receptionist looked up, her eyes widening slightly in recognition. "Miss Ava?" I nodded. "Is Ethan available?" She hesitated. "He's in a meeting, but I can." Before she could finish, a familiar voice echoed from the hallway. "Ava?" I turned to see him standing there, just as I remembered, tall, composed, and effortlessly handsome. But there was something different in his gaze now. A guardedness that hadn't been there before. "Ethan," I greeted, keeping my voice steady. He approached, his expression unreadable. "It's been a long time." "Not that long," I said with a small smile, though my heart pounded. "What do you want?" His tone was polite, but distant. I had expected this. In my past life, I had shattered his trust beyond repair. Now, I had to prove I was not the same foolish girl who had once thrown him away. "I just wanted to talk," I admitted. Ethan studied me for a moment before nodding toward his office. 5 minutes. That was more than I had hoped for. Inside, the office was sleek and minimalistic, just like I remembered. He took a seat behind his desk, waiting for me to speak. "I know I don't deserve your time," I began carefully. "But I also know that I made a terrible mistake." Ethan's expression remained neutral. "Which one?" I swallowed. "Walking away from you." For the first time, his mask slipped, just for a second. A flicker of something, pain, maybe, crossed his eyes before he shut it down. "Ava," he said slowly, "that was a long time ago." "But I regret it," I said softly. "More than you know." He exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "Regret doesn't change the past." "No," I agreed. "But maybe it can change the future." Ethan didn't respond right away, and I knew trust wouldn't be rebuilt overnight. But I was patient. And this time I wouldn't make the same mistake. Chapter 5, Julian's Desperation. Julian never handled losing well. For years, he had manipulated, schemed, and twisted people to his advantage. And I had been his most valuable piece on the chessboard, a pawn he used to climb to power. But now that pawn had broken free, and Julian was starting to feel the consequences. I heard about his struggles before he even reached out to me. My sources told me that his company had suffered a sudden financial strain. Investors were pulling out, and his father's business was losing the silent backing my family had once provided. Without me smoothing things over, Julian was finally facing the full weight of his failures. So it was no surprise when I saw his name flashing on my phone screen. I smirked but let the call ring out. He called again. And again. Desperation. Finally, I picked up. "Julian," I greeted coolly. "Ava," he said, his voice controlled but with an edge of frustration. "You've been avoiding me." "Have I?" I mused. "I've just been busy." A beat of silence. Then, in a smoother tone, he said, "Let's meet. We need to talk." Need. Not want. I leaned back on my couch, amused. "What is there to talk about?" "Ava, don't play games," he snapped, his mask slipping for a moment. "This isn't just about us." "My family." "Your family?" I cut him off. "You mean the people who treated me like a walking wallet? Who smiled to my face while stabbing me in the back? Forgive me if I don't care about their problems." Julian sighed, probably realizing that his usual charm wouldn't work this time. "Let's meet for dinner." Just to talk. I considered it. This could be an opportunity to see how desperate he truly was. And I wanted to watch him squirm. Fine, I said. Tonight at 7. The Bellagio. He hesitated. That's too expensive? I mocked. If you can't afford it, Julian, just say so. I'll be there, he said stiffly before hanging up. That evening, I arrived at the Bellagio in a fitted, elegant dress, exuding the confidence I had lacked in my past life. As I stepped into the private dining room, Julian was already there, waiting. He stood when he saw me, his sharp eyes scanning me like he was searching for the weak, naive girl he once controlled. He wouldn't find her. Ava, he said smoothly. You look stunning. I smiled. I know. His jaw tightened at my indifference, but he masked it quickly. Shall we sit? We did. The waiter poured wine, and Julian leaned forward, putting on his most serious expression. Listen, I know things have been tense between us. I raised an eyebrow. Tense? That's an interesting way to describe betrayal. He exhaled sharply. Ava, you know business can be complicated. But we were good together once. We can be again. I tilted my head. Are you asking for my help, Julian? He hesitated. I'm saying we don't have to be enemies. I chuckled. We were never enemies, Julian. I was just your stepping stone. And now, you have no use for me, do you? He clenched his jaw. That's not true. Then why are you here? I asked, my voice turning cold. His silence was all the answer I needed. I leaned back, satisfied. Enjoy your dinner, Julian. You'll need your strength for what's coming. With that, I stood, leaving him at the table, drowning in his own downfall. Chapter 6, Olivia's Schemes. Julian wasn't the only one struggling to hold on to the illusion of power. Olivia had always played the perfect role, soft-spoken, sweet, and innocent. The woman who endured so much to be with Julian. But underneath that carefully crafted mask was a snake. And a desperate snake was the most dangerous kind. The moment news spread that I had cut ties with Julian's family, Olivia wasted no time making her move. Rumors started trickling into high society circles, whispers that I was bitter and vengeful, that I was trying to destroy Julian out of jealousy. That I was a scorned woman who couldn't handle losing. I laughed when I first heard them. She really thinks this will work? I mused as I sipped my coffee, lounging in my office. She's banking on people seeing you as the villain, my assistant, Clara, replied, handing me a stack of reports. And some are already believing it. I flipped through the papers, screenshots of social media posts, articles hinting at my obsession with Julian, and even a fake leak suggesting I had tried to bribe one of his business partners to ruin him. Olivia was playing dirty. But I had spent an entire lifetime underestimating her. That wouldn't happen again. Let's turn the tables, I said, a smirk forming. If Olivia wants to paint me as a villain, let's make sure she looks like the liar she truly is. The first step was controlling the narrative. I attended a charity gala that evening, dressed in soft pastels, my demeanor nothing but warm and composed. I greeted acquaintances, exchanged pleasantries, and acted completely unbothered. Reporters, waiting for a scandal, were disappointed. One approached me hesitantly. Miss Ava, there have been some claims that you're targeting Julian's family. Do you have anything to say about these allegations? I gave a gentle smile, feigning confusion. Targeting? That's a strong word. I tilted my head. I simply chose to walk away from people who didn't appreciate me. I wish them well, truly. I hope Julian and Olivia find the happiness they always claimed to have. The reporters exchanged looks. This wasn't the reaction they expected. But, I continued, lowering my voice just slightly, it's interesting, isn't it? The moment I focus on myself, suddenly there are all these stories about me. Almost as if someone is trying to control how the public sees me. The seed was planted. By the next morning, the narrative had shifted. People began questioning the sudden flood of rumors against me. Why was Olivia so focused on me when she supposedly had the man of her dreams? Then, a scandal broke, one I had carefully orchestrated. A former friend of Olivia's came forward, revealing old messages of Olivia complaining about Julian before she married him. Screenshots of her calling him an idiot I have to babysit and not as charming as he thinks he is flooded social media. The public loved the irony. The woman who painted herself as the devoted, selfless lover was now exposed as an opportunist. And as for me? I remained quiet, letting the storm rage around Olivia. She had tried to tarnish my name. Instead, she had destroyed her own. Chapter 7: Gaining Allies. The downfall of Julian and Olivia wasn't just about revenge, it was about strategy. I had already cut off their financial lifeline, but if I wanted to ensure their collapse, I needed allies. People who had power, influence, and, most importantly, reasons to stand against them. In my past life, I had been so focused on Julian that I ignored the real players in the business world. This time, I wouldn't make that mistake. The opportunity came during an exclusive business conference, one that I had previously skipped because Julian had convinced me it wasn't important. What a fool I had been. The room was filled with CEOs, investors, and influential figures who shaped the economy. I could already see alliances forming, deals being discussed over glasses of champagne. I had done my research. There were 3 key figures I needed to win over. First, Mr. Lancaster, a seasoned investor who had once considered working with Julian's family but backed out due to their arrogance. He respected intelligence and long-term vision. Second, Eleanor King, the head of a luxury brand empire. Julian had tried to manipulate her into a bad business deal in my past life. This time, I planned to show her I was the better choice. And finally, Damian Wolf, a ruthless but brilliant businessman who had no patience for weakness. He valued results over everything else. If I could prove my worth, he would be an invaluable ally. I approached Mr. Lancaster first, greeting him with a warm but confident smile. Mr. Lancaster, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've admired your work in the investment sector for years. He raised a brow, intrigued. Miss Ava, I hear you've been making quite the impression lately. I chuckled. I prefer to call it correcting past mistakes. I leaned in slightly. You once considered working with the Hawthorne family, didn't you? His expression darkened. A waste of my time. Then let me offer you something better. I pulled out a folder, filled with projections for a joint investment opportunity, one that Julian's family had been too short-sighted to consider. As he skimmed through, I saw his interest grow. After a moment, he nodded. You have my attention. One down. Next was Eleanor King. I found her at the bar, sipping on a glass of wine. I believe we have a common enemy, I said casually, taking the seat beside her. She smirked. Julian Hawthorne? I raised my glass in a mock toast. The very one. She chuckled. I assume you have a proposal? I do, I said, sliding her a document outlining a potential collaboration between my family's business and hers. One that benefits both of us and ensures Julian never has the chance to interfere with your company again. She glanced at the details and smiled. I like the way you think. 2 down. Finally, Damian Wolf. He was the hardest to impress. I found him standing near the exit, watching the room like a predator surveying his prey. Mr. Wolf, I greeted, my tone unwavering. He barely glanced at me. You're the woman causing chaos in the business world. I smiled. I prefer to think of it as restructuring. He finally looked at me. Why should I care? I handed him a single-page summary of my plans. Because aligning with me means being on the winning side. He read it quickly, then met my gaze. We'll see if you can back up those words. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. By the end of the night, I had secured 2 powerful allies and gained the interest of a third. Julian had no idea what was coming. Chapter 8, Ethan's Return. I hadn't seen Ethan in years, at least, not in this lifetime. But here he was, standing just a few feet away from me at the same business event where I had secured my new allies. The moment our eyes met, time seemed to slow. Ethan still had the same commanding presence, the quiet confidence that made him stand out in any room. But there was something else in his gaze, something colder. I had hurt him deeply in my past life. I had abandoned him for Julian, blinded by the illusion of love. And now, even though I had been granted a second chance, I knew he had no reason to trust me. But that wouldn't stop me from trying. As the event carried on, I found my chance when I noticed Ethan stepping out onto the balcony alone. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before following him outside. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and expensive cologne. "Ethan," I said softly. He didn't turn immediately. Instead, he took a slow sip of his drink before finally meeting my gaze. "Ava." His voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge to it. "I didn't expect to see you here." I let out a small chuckle. To be honest, I didn't expect to be here either. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Then, he finally spoke again. "I heard about what you did to Julian's family." I tilted my head. "Do you disapprove?" He studied me for a moment. "No. I just never imagined you'd be the one to bring him down." A small smirk tugged at my lips. "People change." His expression remained unreadable. "Do they?" I swallowed. "I have." Ethan let out a quiet breath, shaking his head slightly. "You once swore you loved me, Ava. And then, just like that, you walked away. Now you expect me to believe that you've changed?" I didn't flinch. "I deserved that." "No," I admitted. "I don't expect you to believe anything. But I do hope that one day, you might see for yourself." He watched me, searching for something in my face. Then, with a small, almost bitter chuckle, he said, "We'll see." It wasn't a rejection. But it wasn't acceptance either. As I returned to the party, I felt an odd mixture of hope and regret. Ethan wasn't the same man who had once loved me unconditionally. And I wasn't the same woman who had broken his heart. I didn't know if we could ever return to what we once had. But at least now, I had a chance to prove that I was no longer the foolish girl who had thrown everything away. And I intended to take it. Chapter 9, Julian's Descent. Julian had always believed himself untouchable. He thrived on control, using charm and manipulation to bend the world to his will. But now, for the first time, his world was crumbling around him, and I was the one pulling the strings. I had taken away the financial support he once took for granted. His family's business, once bolstered by my influence, was now struggling to stay afloat. His father, once proud and powerful, was now losing credibility in the business world. And Julian? He was growing desperate. I saw it in the way he moved at events, forcing smiles that didn't reach his eyes. I saw it in the way he called me, his voice tinged with an urgency he tried to mask. But I wasn't the same woman who once worshipped him. I wasn't answering his calls anymore. One evening, as I was reviewing documents in my office, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Julian. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But then, I smirked and picked up. "Ava," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "We need to talk." "I'm busy." "This is important." I leaned back in my chair. "Is it about your father's business deals falling apart?" Or perhaps Olivia's failing attempts to ruin my reputation? Because I have no interest in either. He exhaled sharply. We need to meet. No, Julian. You need me to meet you. There's a difference. Silence. For the first time, he had no response. I chuckled. Goodbye, Julian. I hung up. The next time I saw him was at a high-profile business gala. He had always been the center of attention at these events, but tonight, he looked different. His usual arrogance was cracked, replaced by an underlying tension. He was losing control, and he knew it. When our eyes met, he made his way toward me, ignoring Olivia's grip on his arm. She shot me a glare, but I merely smiled. Ava, Julian greeted, forcing a smile. You've been avoiding me. I raised an eyebrow. I've been busy. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. We need to talk. Alone. I took a sip of my champagne, letting the silence stretch between us before responding. Julian, I don't take private meetings with married men. It's inappropriate, don't you think? His jaw tightened. Besides, I continued, flashing a sweet smile, I think Olivia might get the wrong idea. Julian turned to glance at his wife, who was watching us intently, her eyes narrowing. I leaned closer, just enough for him to hear. You should focus on keeping your own house from collapsing before you worry about me. Then, I walked away, leaving him standing there, humiliated, powerless, and exactly where I wanted him. Julian was finally learning what it felt like to lose. And this was only the beginning. Chapter 10, The Final Confrontation. Julian was unraveling. His business was failing, his reputation was crumbling, and Olivia's desperate schemes were only making things worse. But true to his nature, he wasn't ready to accept defeat. Instead, he did what he always did, he tried to manipulate his way back into control. This time, I was ready for him. It started with a message. Ava, meet me. Just once. You owe me that much. I stared at the words on my phone, feeling nothing but cold amusement. I owe him? The man who used me, discarded me, and humiliated me in front of the world? If anything, he owed me a lifetime of apologies. Still, I agreed to meet. Not because I owed him, but because I wanted to watch him break. The meeting place was a private lounge in an upscale hotel. Julian had always preferred places where he could control the atmosphere, but tonight, I was the one in control. When I arrived, he was already there, waiting. He looked exhausted, his sharp features drawn, his usual confidence dimmed. For the first time, he looked like a man on the edge. Ava, he said as I took my seat across from him. I crossed my legs, calmly sipping my drink. You have 5 minutes. His jaw clenched. Is that what it's come to? You treating me like a stranger? I gave him a slow, deliberate smile. Julian, we were never strangers. But we were never anything real either. You made sure of that. He exhaled sharply. I made mistakes. Mistakes? I repeated, tilting my head. Is that what you call using me, humiliating me, and leaving me to die alone? He flinched. Good. I was young, Ava. I was ambitious. His voice softened, trying to sound regretful. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I almost laughed. Are you saying you regret choosing Olivia? Julian hesitated. That single moment of silence spoke louder than words. You want to know the difference between you and me, Julian? I leaned forward, my voice steady. I learned from my past. I became stronger. But you? You're still the same man, clinging to power, using people like stepping stones. His expression darkened. That's not true. It is, I said simply. And you know it. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then, his hand tightened around his glass. Ava, listen. I stood. This conversation is over. Julian shot up from his seat, grabbing my wrist. His grip was tight, desperate. I'm not letting you walk away. I met his gaze, completely unshaken. That's the difference, Julian. You never had the power to stop me. I pulled my hand free and walked away, leaving him behind. Julian had lost. And I had never felt more free. Chapter 11, Olivia's Downfall. Olivia had spent years crafting the perfect image, Julian's devoted childhood sweetheart, the victim of my supposed scheming, the innocent woman who had endured everything to be with the man she loved. It had worked before. The public adored her, saw her as the woman who triumphed over an heiress who had tried to steal her man. But that was in the past. Now, the world was starting to see the cracks in her perfect mask. The first real blow came when Julian's business began to collapse. Investors were pulling out, board members were panicking, and their once stable empire was crumbling. Without my family's influence, Julian had no safety net. And Olivia? She had no idea how to survive without him. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived when a scandal broke out, one that had nothing to do with me but everything to do with Olivia. I had known for weeks that she had been funneling money from Julian's struggling company into a private account under a fake charity's name. A selfish little escape plan for when things got worse. But greed makes people careless. And Olivia had been very, very careless. With a simple anonymous tip to the right journalist, the story exploded. Julian Carter's wife caught in financial scandal, embezzlement allegations under investigation. The headlines spread like wildfire. Public opinion, once in her favor, turned against her in an instant. News outlets dug into her past, uncovering every little lie she had told, every manipulation, every fake sob story. Social media tore her apart. And then, the final strike, Julian himself. 2 days after the scandal broke, Julian released a statement distancing himself from Olivia. I had no prior knowledge of my wife's actions, he declared. I am deeply disappointed and will be fully cooperating with the investigation. Thrown under the bus by the very man she had betrayed me for. How poetic. I happened to run into Olivia by chance, though I suspected she had been looking for me. It was at a high-end boutique, one she used to frequent when she was still Julian's perfect wife. Now, she looked exhausted, her face pale from stress, her usual confident aura completely shattered. When she saw me, her eyes filled with hatred. This was you. I tilted my head. Me? Olivia, you stole that money all on your own. You ruined my life, she hissed. I gave her a slow, deliberate smile. No, Olivia. You did that all by yourself. She trembled with rage, but I could see the truth in her eyes. She knew I was right. I had waited for this moment, but standing there, watching her fall apart, I felt nothing. No hatred. No satisfaction. Just a sense of finality. Olivia was finished. And I was finally free of her shadow. Chapter 12, Justice for the Past. The fall of Julian and Olivia was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. They had taken everything from me in my past life, my love, my dignity, my family's wealth. Their betrayals had cost me more than just money, they had stolen years of my life. This time I would take back everything they had stolen, down to the last cent. Julian's company was already crumbling, but I had no intention of letting him walk away unscathed. My family's lawyers had been gathering evidence for weeks, contracts, financial records, and old deals where Julian had used my father's name to secure investments. Deals that were, upon closer inspection, full of fraudulent claims. Julian had used my family's reputation to prop up his business, but without us, those deals were now liabilities. And I was making sure he was held accountable for every single one. The lawsuit hit the news a week after Olivia's scandal broke. Carter Industries faces legal action for financial fraud, major investors demand compensation. His company's stock plummeted. Julian tried to fight back, but he was outmatched. My family's lawyers were some of the best in the country, and I made sure every legal loophole was closed before he could exploit it. Within days, he was drowning in lawsuits and debt. I wasn't done. Olivia might have been exposed, but I wanted to make sure she never had a way back into high society. So, I reached out to the right people, socialites, media figures, even fashion designers she used to work with. The whispers began. Would you really want to be associated with Olivia Carter? Her invitations to exclusive events quietly disappeared. Brands severed ties with her. Even the charities she once used to boost her image wanted nothing to do with her now. She had built her entire life around Julian's status. Without it, she was nothing. The final blow came when the court ruled in my favor. Julian was ordered to pay back every penny he had taken from my family, plus damages. His company, once a rising empire, was now a failing mess of debt and lawsuits. Investors abandoned him. Banks refused him loans. I watched from a distance as he tried to salvage what was left, but there was no saving it. Everything he had built on my family's name was crumbling beneath him. And I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. The day he finally broke was the day he came to see me. I was in my office, overlooking the city skyline, when my assistant informed me of his arrival. I expected anger, maybe even threats. But when Julian stepped into my office, he looked defeated. "Ava," he said, his voice hollow. "You win." I leaned back in my chair, meeting his gaze with a calm, unbothered expression. "No, Julian," I corrected. "I just took back what was mine." He had lost everything. And I was finally free. Chapter 13, Rebuilding Her Life. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I was free. Julian and Olivia were no longer shadows looming over me. Their downfall had been swift and absolute. The lawsuits had drained Julian's wealth, and Olivia had become a pariah in the social circles she once thrived in. Their names had become synonymous with scandal and disgrace. But I didn't dwell on them anymore. I had something far more important to focus on, my future. The Ava of my past life had sacrificed everything for a man who never valued her. This Ava? She had no intention of making that mistake again. I poured my energy into rebuilding what I had lost, not just my wealth, but my identity. I wasn't just the daughter of a powerful family, I was a force of my own. With the connections I had carefully nurtured, I launched my own business venture, an investment firm that focused on supporting female entrepreneurs. It wasn't just about making money, it was about creating something meaningful, something that would outlast me. And unlike Julian, I didn't need to step on others to succeed. One evening, as I reviewed a new business proposal, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Ethan. A part of me had expected him to reach out eventually, but now that the moment had arrived, I hesitated. Our history was complicated. I had hurt him in ways I couldn't erase. But I had changed. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Hello, Ethan." There was a pause on the other end before he finally spoke. "You really are different now." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A small smile formed on my lips. "I had to be." "I've been watching," he admitted. "You're not the same woman who walked away from me all those years ago." I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening around the phone. "No, I'm not." There was another pause, and then. "Meet me for coffee tomorrow?" I didn't know what this meant for us. I didn't know if we could undo the past or if we were even meant to. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. Chapter 14, A New Beginning. The cafe was quiet, nestled in a corner of the city away from the usual crowds. As I walked in, I spotted Ethan immediately. He was sitting by the window, his dark eyes scanning a newspaper, a cup of coffee in front of him. He looked up as I approached, setting the paper aside. A small, knowing smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "You actually came." I took a seat across from him, mirroring his expression. "You sound surprised." "I am." He studied me for a moment before shaking his head. "No, actually, I'm not. You're not the woman who ran away from everything. Not anymore." His words held no bitterness, just quiet observation. I stirred my coffee, feeling the warmth seep into my fingers. "I owe you an apology, Ethan." He leaned back in his chair, waiting. "I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go," I admitted, my voice steady but honest. "I was blinded by what I thought was love, by promises that never meant anything. And in the process, I lost the one person who truly cared about me." Ethan exhaled, his gaze softening. "I won't lie, Ava. It hurt. I spent years wondering what I did wrong, why I wasn't enough." A pang of guilt twisted in my chest. "You were always enough. I was the one who didn't see it." Silence stretched between us. For the first time, there was no weight of anger, no resentment. Only the echoes of what could have been and the possibilities of what might still be. "Where do we go from here?" I asked, unsure of what I was even hoping for. Ethan smiled slightly. "I don't know. But I think we have time to figure it out." As the days passed, I continued to rebuild my life, not for revenge, not to prove anything to anyone, but for myself. Julian and Olivia had become ghosts of the past. Their attempts to claw their way back into high society failed miserably. The world they had once controlled had turned its back on them, and I made sure it stayed that way. But I didn't linger on them anymore. I focused on expanding my business, building a future that had nothing to do with the mistakes of my past. And then there was Ethan. He never rushed me, never pushed. He simply remained by my side, a steady presence as I carved out my new path. One evening, as we walked through the city after a long day, he glanced at me with a smirk. "You know, Ava, I'm still waiting for you to make it up to me." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And how exactly do you want me to do that?" His smile widened. "Dinner. Tomorrow. Your treat." I laughed, shaking my head. "Fine. But I warn you, I have expensive taste. I think I can handle it." For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I wasn't looking at the past with regret or the future with fear. I was simply living. And it felt good. Chapter 15, The Future She Deserves. The sun cast a golden glow over the city skyline as I stood on the balcony of my new office, sipping my tea. The past no longer held me in its grip. I had finally broken free from the chains of betrayal, heartbreak, and regret. This was my life now, one built on my terms, with no ghosts of the past weighing me down. A soft knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. I turned to see my assistant, Lily, stepping inside. "Miss Ava, the final documents for the acquisition are ready for your signature," she said with a smile. I nodded, taking the papers from her. This deal would cement my place in the business world as a force to be reckoned with. Julian and Olivia had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, they had only made me stronger. As I signed the last page, Lily hesitated. "Also, Mr. Ethan is waiting for you downstairs." A slow smile formed on my lips. "Tell him I'll be right down." When I stepped outside, Ethan was leaning casually against his car, watching me with that familiar, unreadable expression. "You're late," he teased. I smirked. "Business comes first, Mr. Carter." He opened the car door for me. And what about dinner? Is that business or pleasure? I slid into the passenger seat, meeting his gaze. Maybe a little of both. As he got in and started the car, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed. Julian and Olivia were nothing more than bitter memories. Their downfall had been inevitable. The power and influence they once wielded had crumbled, leaving them with nothing but each other, exactly as I had planned. But I no longer needed to dwell on them. My focus was on the future. A future where I dictated my own happiness. That night, as Ethan and I walked through the park after dinner, he stopped under the streetlights, turning to face me. "You've come a long way, Ava," he said quietly. "Do you finally feel at peace?" I exhaled, looking up at the stars. "I do," I admitted. "For the first time, I'm not looking back. I'm not chasing revenge or trying to prove anything. I'm just happy." His eyes softened, and after a moment, he reached for my hand. "And what about us?" he asked. "Where do we go from here?" I smiled, lacing my fingers with his. "Wherever we want." This was the future I deserved. A future where I wasn't bound by past mistakes, where love wasn't a burden but a choice. And for the first time I was choosing myself. Know your turn. If you loved Ava's journey of redemption, strength, and second chances, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. What did you think of Ava's final decision? Should she have chosen love or complete independence? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. For more gripping stories filled with drama, betrayal, and empowerment, hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching.